Fed Up, the number one place where you can get up on all things Federal League. I am your host, Josh Stoll. For those of you hoping for our preview episode today, I'm going to throw a delightful little curveball at you. My teammates might say it's the first real good curve of my career. But when I had a chance to sit down with an absolute legend of the game, Mr. Frank Viola, before his schedule got really crazy, I absolutely had to take advantage of that opportunity. As you'll learn, I've gotten to know Frank through my time at the Minnesota Twins fantasy camp. I actually went down there in hopes of playing for Frank and Jeff Reardon, thinking maybe if I played for them that they would share that secret trade tip that I could bring back to you in the Federal League and use it to dominate you guys with. Well, that didn't necessarily happen. But what did was I somehow became friends with a pair of baseball legends, which is infinitely more valuable to me. Jeff and I connected over some of the losses in life that we've experienced, and that relationship has really meant a great deal to me. Frank, there's just so much about his game that I've envied. The way he was just an absolute bulldog on the mound in pressure situations, but also the way he genuinely enjoyed playing and was able to be a jovial teammate and a good connector in the clubhouse are all things that I really try to embody myself. We were originally supposed to chat for 15 to 30 minutes, but Frank was just so generous with his time. He really allowed me to keep firing questions at him, and we spoke for nearly an hour. It was an absolute surreal experience for me to have this opportunity late last week. I hope you enjoy it too. Joining us today is a name that needs no introduction for baseball fans, but we're going to give him one anyway. He's a World Series champion, a World Series MVP, a Cy Young Award winner, a three-time All-Star. He racked up 176 wins over a stellar Major League Baseball career and is one of the most respected pitching minds in the game. Beyond the accolades, he's a guy who loves baseball at every level, and that includes our corner of baseball world right here in the Federal League. It's a genuine pleasure to introduce sweet music himself, Frank Viola. Frank, welcome to Fed Up.
Nice seeing you, Josh. My pleasure. Thanks.
Typically, when I have a new guest on, I'll ask the question, what's your baseball story? And some guys respond with teams that they played with, or how long they played, or their childhood, their love of the game. But with that open-ended backdrop, I'm gonna ask you, Frank, what's your baseball story?
You are giving me a long leash, aren't you? Holy cow. Long story short, and as you know, you've been with me for a couple of years now. Long stories are long stories for me normally. So, my dad took me to my first major league game when I was 6 years old. Went to Shea Stadium and watched the New York Mets play, and I enjoyed it so much that over the next 11 years, we went to 10 Met games a year and one Yankee game. The 10 Mets to root for the Mets, and one Yankee to let me know there was another New York team. So in that time frame, I just grew to love the game. My dad, the first game that I ever went to, put a scorecard in front of me and taught me how to keep score. I love that. And then from that moment on, I was hooked. I just loved watching the game of baseball. 9 years old, I actually played my first baseball game. Played my first Little League game. So from 9 years old till 60, I'm going to be 65 in a week and a half. So for the last 56 years, it's been baseball sometime or another. And the passion and the love of the game is still there. The game itself, we might talk about that over the next half an hour or so. I have some question about, but the purity of baseball is still in my heart, and that's why I'm still coaching and doing the stuff I'm doing. So baseball has been in my blood for a long, long time, and I've been very fortunate and very lucky to have a good road with it.
It's a great lead in. In preparation for this interview, I was just watching some old clips of the 87 World Series, and what stood out to me immediately was just how different the rules are, let alone the strategy and the gameplay, but how different the rules are from when you played to what they are now with instant replay and automated balls and strikes and pitch clocks. Which changes do you feel have made the game better, and which could you live without?
Let me segue into this. I've been for the last 6 years working with the High Point Rockers in the Atlantic League, which is an independent professional league, similar to what the St. Paul Saints used to be in the American Association before the AAA team took over there. We're a stepping stone for guys who played Major League Baseball, AAA, AA, A ball, who are trying to get back into affiliated ball, now in today's game, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, the Asia route, or even Mexico. It's just to continue their career playing professional baseball. So in the Atlantic League, we were the trendsetters. Back in 2019, we started the ABS, the automatic balls and strikes, and it was horrendous, Josh. It was horrendous. The problem was the concept is okay, but the program they used was 6 years old, so that it was outdated, and it was so inconsistent. It made the game so brutal to play and to watch. In today's game, using the ABS, I understand it, and it's especially with the challenges now that they have and all that stuff. I kind of like that aspect because they really fine tuned it since we've used it, and a close pitch now could actually be verified as a close pitch, and there's no question about it. Now, what I don't like about that rule is you're taking the relationship between umpires and players away. You can't yell at an umpire. You can't yell at an ABS. You can't yell at an umpire now if he says ball strike because he's going to say, well, the ABS says the ball is strike. So you lose that love of the game that the fans have come to grow and watch. The players yelling at the umpires yelling back. So I mean, there's a place for all that. That's what's bothersome to me. The big base, um, the three batters you have to face in a row. We can't do that where you have a lefty specialist who faces the one guy who's out of the game. All that stuff's good for the game. I think the best change they've done is the shot clock, or is the speed up rule.
Yeah.
Because as you know, the game could be so damn boring at times. Speeding it up, it's going to help the fans. It's going to keep it under 3 hours, and it's nice to be able to come home in a decent hour. So from that standpoint, there have been really good changes, but I think the big one is the ABS and the love and hate relationship you have between the umpires. I think that if it does continue like it looks like it's going to, that would bother me because, as I said, I love relating to umpires, and it would take that relationship away.
Game 7, 87 World Series, perhaps a career defining game for you. I was made aware of a story by one of our league members, Tori Holt. Thank you for that. That Roy Smalley gave you some impactful advice in the game that could have changed the outcome. Would you mind sharing that story with us?
Sure. I'll even go further. I'll tell you that when I first came up with the Minnesota Twins, Roy was with the Twins, and I will tell you flat out, we did not get along. There was a game in Toronto, and now you got to remember, I'm a brash young kid coming out of college, less than a year in the minor leagues, and I'm in the big leagues, and I'm pitching in Toronto, and it was around the fourth inning. And I'm sorry, I like saying segue a lot. I'll segue it by saying this. Every time I went to Toronto, if I pitched well, I lost. If I pitched bad, I got my lunch handed to me. So I didn't have much success in Toronto. So it just so happens it's the fourth inning of a game, and we're winning like 2-0, and I'm actually pitching a pretty good game. And the leadoff hitter hit a ball maybe one step to Roy's right, and he's playing shortstop. And it went under his glove. And the old, brash, young, idiot kid looked at the scoreboard, saw it was a base hit, got pissed off, forgot about pitching. Next guy hit a ground ball to Roy's left. Easy, tailor-made double play, in my opinion. Under his glove, looked at the scoreboard, another base hit. 5 runs later, didn't get out of the inning. Another loss in Toronto. Walked off the field after being taken out, looked at my manager, said, you ever put that SOB at shortstop again, I'm not going to pitch for you. That's how stupid and brash I was back then. Wait till the end of the game. The press comes, asks what happened. I said, I pitched like crap, so on and so forth. And I get a tap on my shoulder, and it's Roy behind me going, so what did you say about that shortstop you had? And I was like, well, that just was a life lesson that I better take heed of. And I fortunately got better in that aspect of it. But, that was our relationship. We didn't really see eye to eye after that. We could get along as teammates, but we weren't friends. Then we fast forward to the 87 World Series. I'm pitching my third game against St. Louis Cardinal in a matter of 9 days. So if you know the history of baseball, if you go back to back against teams, they get books on you, you get books on them, but you fall into habits and you start doing stuff that, or you pitch away from your strengths because you just faced them 4 days earlier with what the strengths you had. So it's the third time I'm facing them. It's game 7, second inning. I gave up 2 runs on 4 hits against Cardinals. In today's game, Josh, pitchers warming up, I'm probably out of the game. Don't even have a chance to succeed. But back then, TK, the game itself gave me the opportunity to redeem myself. So I'm sitting in the runway in the Metrodome and on the staircase between innings trying to get my head back together. And when I'm pitching, I wanted to be left alone. I didn't want anybody talking to me. Just leave me the hell alone. And all of a sudden, here comes Roy Smalley, of all people, coming up to me. He goes, I know you want to be left alone, Frank, but I got to tell you something. And for whatever reason, I just calmly said, "Okay, tell me what you got to say." He said, "You gave up 2 runs and 4 hits in the second inning. What were the hits on?" And I'm like, "4 changeups." That changeup at that time was my bread and butter, but sometimes I fell in love with it too much. In St. Louis for that inning, got 2 runs and 4 hits, and it was because they know the book on me. And I'm sitting there going, "Damn, he's right." And I let it go, and I talked to Timmy Loudon, my catcher. I said, "We got to start throwing some more fastballs." Well, I retired over the next 6 innings, 18 of the 19 guys. I threw 71 pitches in that 6 inning period, 68 fastballs. I threw 2 changeups, and I threw 1 curveball over those next 6 innings. Made me the MVP. If I should have been or not, but I was named the MVP, which is cool. And I went up to Ray afterwards and I said, "I don't know how the hell you did that or why the hell you did that, but I really, really appreciate what you did." And from that point on, we're not the closest of friends, but we have gotten closer over time. And that's a pretty special man to be able to go up to somebody, know how you feel about that guy, and still help him out. But I think it shows the significance of how close knit that '87 team was, because I think people have to realize you win championships with talent, of course, but you cannot win without the relationship of the 25 guys, coaching staff, trainers, clubhouse guys, all working together. And Tom Kelly was the best at that. 87, 91. You know what happened in 91 as well. And you played fantasy baseball. You come to the camps, the Twins camp. We've had you a couple of years, Jeffrey and I, and I think you realize over those we preach in a short period of time how important and close knitness of a team could develop. And we won a championship a couple of years with you. Of course, you were the star. I'll give you your kudos. But I mean, it does me, and it doesn't matter. The best and the worst guys still have to get along on the field. And I think what we learned as a team in '87 has carried me in my coaching career for the last 37 years with the same attitude. If you get along, you will give yourself the best chance to win.
I would argue too, it takes a pretty special person to receive that advice in the heat of the moment with, such high stakes. So I commend you for being humble enough to accept that advice and make the change.
I appreciate that. But I mean, I guess as bad as that inning was, I had to listen to anything.
Well, I know Twins fans everywhere appreciate that. Many of the guys in our league can probably tell you exactly where they were when the Terminator recorded that last out. So definitely a special place in our league's heart for sure.
Appreciate that.
You had a knack for winning some tight ball games, and two of the more notable ones that I'll bring up. One of them, often referred to as the greatest collegiate game of all time. You were on the winning end of a 1-0 game when you went ahead and faced Ron Darling when he was with Yale. You were at St. John's. He threw 11 innings of no hit baseball, and yet you still were able to come out on top of that one. Another one I'm going to point to is in '89 when you faced off against Oral Hershiser and the Dodgers. You were both the reigning Cy Young Award winners of your respective leagues. Obviously, you had been traded to the National League, which brought up the matchup, but you won both those games 1-0. You threw a 3-hit shutout against the Dodgers. How did your approach change, or did it, when you knew the guy on the other side was dealing and it was going to be a tight one?
Well, I'll start with the Hershiser one first because that's probably the easier one to explain. After I won the Cy Young with the Twins in '88, I was the first Cy Young Award winner ever traded the following year. So I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder. The Twins acted like they really wanted me, and they were talking about a contract extension. It got pretty heated in the paper, and the fans turned against me. Exactly what the Twins wanted to do, because I found out later on from Andy McPhail 15 years later that I never was going to finish that season because I was the only guy that they could trade to put the team back on the map to have a chance to win. And of course, the 5 guys they traded for me, Rick Aguilera became a great closer. Kevin Tapani was an absolute stud starting pitcher. And David West, who was the key to trade, was part of that '91 World Championship team. So they always had the lineup. And what they needed a stronger pitching staff. And by getting 3 for 1, they did what they set out to do. They were nice. They sent me to the Mets, which was my hometown team. I rooted for them. I was very appreciative of that. But, after everything's said and done, you don't realize how good you have it until you leave it. And the Twins, if I look back at my career, I wish I would never have left the Twins because not only because of who they were as people, but who the fans were and the support system and everything else. But anyway, so I'm pitching against Oral, and Oral had that record shutout streak the year before he tied down Drysdale. He won Cy Young. And that just the head-to-head matchup is just something you just want to go up against every time. So we ended up winning the game 1-0, as you mentioned, 3-hit shutout. But the thing I remember more about that was I got my first major league hit off of Oral Hershiser in that game. So I remember that more than the shutout. I did pitch well.
Yeah.
That was cool. But the Ron Darling games, to this day, it was a collegiate game. To this day, it was, and I saw 3 no-hitters live. It was, in my opinion, the best pitch game I have ever seen in person to this day. St. John's was just a bunch of egotistical, loud-mouthed sons of guns who didn't think anybody could beat them. And when Don Giordano, our third hitter in the lineup, came up and struck out, came out at the end of the inning, he looked at the dugout. He said, "Boys, we're in for a long day." That's how good Ron Darling stuff was from the start. And as you mentioned, he went 11 no-hit innings. He ended up striking out 17 guys. I think in those 11, 12 innings, he threw 190-plus pitches. Never came out of the game. But we scored a run. We got a first base hit the 12th. Our leadoff hitter, Steve Scaffa, got a hit, stole second. Their shortstop made an error to make it first and third with 1 out. We pulled a double steal. And on the double steal, the catcher was supposed to throw it to Ronnie, who was going to pick it off the mound and try picking a guy off at third. Well, when he followed through on the pitch, he fell. And the ball went over his head. We pulled the double steal, and we ended up scoring a run and winning 1-0. 2 things about that game that stick out. And yes, I pitched very well. I gave up 7 hits in 11 innings. I threw 150 plus pitches myself. But the 2 things that made the difference in my eyes was we came back to the ballpark the next day as winners. So we played the winners bracket game in the afternoon. Ronnie had to come back, and his team had to come back and play the losers bracket game. Well, when Ronnie didn't pitch, Ronnie played right field. So after throwing 194 pitches, he's in right field when we come in to go take batting practice and stuff. So as pitchers, we were watching the game. And in the 6th inning, I'll never forget, in the 6th inning of that game against Central Michigan, there was a man on third base, and a fly ball was hit to the warning track in right field, 330 feet from the plate. Ronnie, after 194 pitches the day before, caught the ball into a 1-hopper to the plate, Josh. I couldn't wipe my butt the next day, and he threw a 1-hopper to the plate. That was one that I'll never forget. And he ended up being the 7th pick of the draft that year, and he had a pretty good career himself. But what was even cooler about that game between Yale and St. John's, you don't think that, those aren't great names in the laurels of baseball. But in that game, there were 5 professional athletes that played. Myself and Ronnie played baseball. John Franco, who was a pretty darn good closer in the game, was our pitcher on our roster. He pinch ran. And then Yale had 2 athletes. Their starting left fielder, name was Rich Diana. He played in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins for a couple of years, and I was a world-class orthopedist. But the guy who made the error, the shortstop who made the error for Yale to open up the doors for us to score in the 12th inning, he only had a 12-year NHL career with the New York Rangers. Bob Brook, defenseman Bob Brook.
Oh boy.
So how about that? That was my memories of those days, and the reason why the game was written up and cherished so much was that a world-class sports writer by the name of Roger Angel was at the game. He was covering Smokey Joe Wood, who's a Hall of Fame with the Boston Red Sox. They were just going to take in a baseball game, and they were going to interview each other, and Roger was going to interview Smokey Joe. But the game got so interesting, so intense, so everything. Roger forgot about the interview, and our game ended up becoming the vital part of the article. And that's why everybody says it might have been the greatest pitch game ever, because somebody like Roger Angel was at the game witnessing it.
Funny how baseball can work itself out there, and unbelievable. I didn't know more than half of what you just shared there. So thank you for that.
I always have some weird stuff. So yeah, I like sharing that kind of stuff.
I love it. The 1988 season, obviously a career year for you, career best in wins, ERA, WHIP. Of course, you were honored with the AL Cy Young Award. Did you feel especially locked in there that year? Was there anything you changed about your approach that made that season special?
No. I mean, I guess you got to go back to the All-Star break in '87. from that point on, the second half of '87 through the playoffs and the World Series, it was the most consistent. I went out every fifth day, and the confidence I gained from that was just through the roof. And my changeup was unbelievable. And in '88, it just followed through. Now, I mean, you're a pitcher. Listen to these numbers and tell me you wouldn't feel comfortable going out every fifth day and knowing that you're going to be. They averaged for me in the '88 season 6.5 runs a game. You feel
Pretty
comfortable
good
going
run
out
support.
now with this, knowing you're going to get 6.5 runs?
Yeah, it might change your mentality a little bit.
Exactly. And the defense, there was nobody. The defense was nobody better in the game. I just knew that if I did my job, kept the team in the game, I was going to be successful. So put that all together. Plus, you ever hear the term? I mean, I'm trying not to talk to you like they use the word tunnel vision.
Yeah.
It was I was so in tune with Timmy Loudon and my catcher that it didn't matter who was hitting. I didn't give a crap. Honestly, I didn't care who was hitting. It was a uniform. I saw a uniform, and all I saw was Timmy Loudon's finger putting the finger down and the glove, and I hit it. I mean, that's how intense the feeling was. It was when you pitch well, 55,000 people screaming. You don't even notice any of that. Now, when you're pitching bad, I hear that granny telling me I suck in the stands. It's that kind of focus, and
Yeah.
throughout the whole '88 season, I had that focus, and I really believe that's why the numbers were the same. And '89, I didn't have the year I got traded. I started out poorly. I had some contract negotiation problems and stuff. So I let the off-field stuff affect my on-field stuff, and I think that's what changed my path as far as baseball was concerned. I realized, you know what? It's not a game anymore. The contract and all that stuff, it became a business. And it took away a little bit of the love of the game that I had prior to in the '87, '88 years where we just played. We were a bunch of, I mean, we go on the road, Josh, and 20 to 25 guys would go to dinner together. That's how close knit we were. I mean, we just did everything
Cool.
together. Kirby, Al Newman, myself, Bert, Keith Allen. I could go on and on. We just really had a friendship on and off the field, and I think it showed. And then you take that and the fan support that we got and the love they showed for us. I mean, you put it all together, and it was pretty magical times those years.
I'm going to give you a list of names here. Want to see if you know what they have in common. Gaylord Perry, Roger Clemens, Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, Roy Halladay, Max Scherzer, Frank Viola, and Blake Snell. Do you know what those 8 names have in common? It's a list of the guys who won 20 plus games in both the AL and the NL.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Pretty elite
The
company
one
there.
that that's not bad. Yeah, I think in the history of the game, I think David Cohn became the 19th guy or something like that
It's unbelievable.
in the history of the game. So that's that was brought up to me a few years ago, and that's pretty cool. That makes you at least it knows you're a consistent pitcher, but you also have to have a lot of things working for you as well. So yeah, that's pretty cool stat. I like that one. The other one that I have, the 20 wins, the MVP, the Cy Young. The one thing in my career, looking back, that I'm most proud of was that, and a lot of people don't realize this, but I think I went 13 years without missing the start. That was what I'm most proud of because I knew I took the ball every 15, no matter how I felt, and gave the team a chance. They talk about Cal Ripken streak. I thought that was a pretty good one in the pitching, and that's something I'm very proud of.
Well, that's really my next question. Is you had such a reputation for being durable, and nowadays the injuries in the game have just skyrocketed, despite the attempts to protect these guys with pitch counts and whatnot. What do you attribute that to?
It's a few things. I think the first and foremost is everybody's trying to chase speed now. With ever since analytics came into play, the big thing is you have to throw there. You just have to throw as hard as you can, and your delivery, your what I call your tempo, all get out of whack because you're just trying to throw the ball as hard as you can. So instead of
Yeah.
becoming a pitcher, you become a thrower. So that's first and foremost. And what happens when you try throwing as hard as you can? You're going to blow something out. The other thing is, as a pitcher, you have to be free and easy in the upper body. A lot of these kids now, they lift weights, they go heavy, they bulk up, and before you know it, they don't have that range of motion like they used to have. And three, you just start these kids out at a young age. They're playing the travel ball and all that stuff. And, not so much in the Northeast or the Midwest because of seasonal situations, but Florida, Texas, California, Arizona, you can play 12 months out of the year. and you're going to burn the kids up. If they don't get hurt, they're going to be burnt out because they're going to hate the game eventually. So you put all that stuff together. That's why you're getting more injuries. The other thing is, I want to be careful how I say this because it's going to come out this way, but I'll explain myself. The kids are soft today. And by that, I mean, when you go to a spring training meeting, when I was AA, AAA pitching coach for the 5 years with the Mets, I was in a big league camp. And we all had a meeting before the day to go over what we were going to do that day. When you have, as the first person to speak, the trainer to tell you Joe Blow has a hangnail, he's got to take the day off, it softens the kids up. The kids are afraid to talk to the trainers because if they say something to trainers, they shut them down. And and all of a sudden now you get used to taking days off. I mean, I want to just change for a second. I'm sorry if I'm doing this for you, Josh, but in today's NBA, the Timberwolves having a great year. Anthony Edwards, go on, so forth. Who thought guys who are making $40 to $60 million contracts need maintenance days off?
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break. Part of your contract is to play as many games as you could possibly play. That is your contract. And here these guys are taking days off and having permission to take days off. As a season ticket holder, as a fan of the game, I go to the game and I see the best player sitting because he needs a rest. I want my money back. I mean, but think about that. It's just everybody, and the rules of the day too. If you hit 100 pitches, my God, you should be out of the game. Right. For a pitcher. So all that stuff put together. If you watch a game today, either it's in my Atlantic League, if it's in AA, AAA, even the big leagues, if you glance at a game and the starting pitcher finally gets through 5 innings and he's got the lead, take a look how many times he glances down there in the 6th inning to see if somebody's warming up to protect him so we can have that lead. I mean, it's just horrible as far as how we've let all these guys get away with what they do. I mean, you played for me in a fantasy game. You didn't want the ball taken out of your hands. I mean, think about all those guys who want the ball, can't have the ball because the game dictates. Blake Snell, you mentioned his name just a second ago. Yeah. World Series a few years ago against the Dodgers. He strikes out the first 3 guys in the lineup twice in a row. And then they take him out of the game because stats say that he can't get him out the 3rd time. Give me a break. If he's your best damn pitcher, let him throw. I mean, that's the stuff that bothers me about the game today. That's why I don't watch the games as much as I used to, because the kids who really, you're not going to have another 300-game winner, Josh. You're not. Right. Because nobody pitches enough innings to warrant 300 wins. I mean, all that kind of stuff just turns me as a fan of the game, because I'd like to see it reverted back where you play a little bit like old school.
You mentioned your time at the Mets. Would love to transition a little bit to your coaching that you've done. So you were at the Mets minor league system, 2007 to 2012. You mentioned already, your time with the High Point Rockers. You've been with them since 2017. You've coached a number of other spots. Your alma mater at St. John's briefly. You won a state title with a high school team, helping out with them. What was the biggest transition that you had to make going from the mound to the dugout?
Realizing that a lot of the things I did, God gifted me, and you can't teach that to a kid. Kid's got to have it or he doesn't have it. You have to build up every kid's ego, confidence, no matter how good they are, how bad they are. And the more you mentally give them the confidence that they can do something, the better they're going to be. And as a coach, the hardest thing, and this is why you don't see a lot of big name star coaches, because everything came so easy to them, they can't coach it to somebody else because you can't explain it. It's a gift that God gave you. What are you going to say? God didn't give you a gift. Sorry, hang with them. You look at the best managers and coaches; those are the guys that struggle a little bit because they had to work for everything they got. I think, and I think the gift that God gave me in the coaching standpoint is that I was very tough mentally, and I learned and got my butt whooped because I wasn't mentally tough at times, and I learned from it. If I had to break down a guy's delivery, mechanics, stuff like that, I couldn't do it, not comfortably, but they talked about baseball being 90% mental. I could work that 90% with you anytime. I'll sit you down, go over the game, tell you, ask what your thoughts were, give you my opinions, and I think that helps. My favorite story in that regard was there was this young kid that just came off of Tommy John surgery. He was 23 years old with the New York Mets. He was pitching in low A ball at 23 years old. He was throwing a side session, and he looked at me afterwards and says, "What the hell am I doing here? I want to quit." And I looked at the kid, and I realized why he was saying what he was saying and stuff. And I said, "Do me a favor." And this was in August of 20, I want to say 2012 ish. And I said, next September, September 2013, I said, "Do me one favor." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Just leave me 2 tickets for your first major league game." And this is low A ball. And he looked at me and he left. You know who that kid was?
Tell me.
Jacob DeGrom.
Unbelievable. Yes.
Jacob DeGrom was ready to walk away from the game because he was getting flustered. And I looked at him. I said, "You got to be kidding me. You got to be patient. The only thing that's hurt him has been his injuries because he's 6'4", 110 pounds. But I mean, you've seen him. He's just beautiful to watch when he's on. I mean, he just every pitch he throws is right there. He's got a purpose. He's got a reason. And it's just so much fun to work with mentally. He's as tough as they come. The one biggest gift I got working with the Mets for the 8 years was all the talent I got to work with. The Jacob DeGroms, the Michael Fulmer, who's a rookie there for Detroit, the Steven
Syndergaard.
Matthews, Syndergaard. I mean, you go on. I looked at the list the other day. It
Zach
was like
Wheeler,
30.
Juris Familia.
Yeah. The only one I didn't work with, and he was a stud, but then he died real fast, was Matt Harvey. Harvey was a little too big for his britches and caught up to him a little bit. But that 2015 year when the Mets went to the World Series, he was pretty dynamite. But I mean, I was very fortunate. I looked at it, and I was like 30 plus major leaguers who I worked with in the Mets organization, which is pretty cool. And my two favorite of them all, because of what the Mets said about him, their front office. There was a kid that was a 34th round draft choice out of Northwest Louisiana, and he came into the league and with the Mets organization, had a bad back, and he toughed it out. Had surgery, toughed it out, just kept on jumping up the levels, and 34th rounders don't make it often, Josh. He gets to Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is a bandbox. I mean, a 60 ERA is not bad because he asked in everything else. Well, at the end of the year, I have season end reports I have to write. And I put this kid's name down, and I said, surefire major leaguer. You take him out of this damn league, and he's going to be a star. Seth Lugo.
Oh boy.
He's had a pretty
Yeah.
good career, right? And
Yeah.
then my favorite one of all was a kid. He's a reliever, and he threw 91, 92, straight as hell. Didn't look like they were. And I'm gonna ask you before I tell you, because I know you're looking at a piece of paper, not trying to figure it out. But he ended up going up the ladder with the Mets slowly. Uh, he didn't have anything. He didn't impress you with anything. He just had what we call big cojones and a
Yeah.
big heart, and you knew that he wasn't going to back down from anybody. And he ended up being a closer for a World Championship team. He's been moving around a little bit from year to year, but he's had a pretty darn good career. And the Mets never thought he'd make it to the big leagues. And do you know who that might be?
It's not Steven Matz, is it?
No.
No. Nobody on my list is matching that description.
Paul Sewald.
Okay. Wow.
Paul Sewell, by Mets said he's never make it as a big leaguer, and he's
Yeah.
ended up having an 8-year career. Won the championship with Arizona a couple of years ago, and he's still dealing. So we as baseball fans, as a baseball fan, you look at people, you don't know what's on the inside. You have to give them the benefit of that. That's why in today's game, the analytics is so overrated. There's a place for it, but it's overrated because as a 15-year major leaguer, what my eyes see because I played the game and what I'm being told by Division 2, Division 3 players who never played above that, but they got the papers in their hand telling me that the guy can't do it. I'm like, wait a second. If you've never played the game, you have no idea who should make it and who shouldn't. If you give everybody that opportunity, even the guys that have no business making it will make it because of the heart and the soul and everything else they bring to the table. And that's what people tend to forget, and that's what bothers me about today's game.
Yeah.
A guy could put. Go ahead.
I'm reminded of Harvey Dorfman and the impact that he had on the game of baseball and focusing really on the mental side of it before
Yep.
teams had psychiatrists and everything, and he talked about just how many talented, uber talented players that he worked with that just never made it because they couldn't master the mental part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, here's a great story. You got me in story mode here. Greg Maddux had a pretty good career, right?
He did.
Yep. Well, he came up with the Cubs as a young kid, throwing 95 to 97. and was getting his lunch handed to him. So during the offseason, Greg Maddux turned into Professor Maddux and started thinking about himself in the game. And what did he do? He decided, you know what? If I'm not getting them out 95, 97, why the hell do I have to throw that hard? So he starts throwing 86, 89 with the movement and everything else, and shows more contrast between his pitches. And what happens? Oh, he just wins 350 games later. You know, it's
Yeah.
called pitching for a reason. And I think another reason why the game's frustrating to me now is you don't have to throw 100 miles an hour to be successful. You could throw 85 miles an hour, hit a bug's ass, and be very successful. You know, and all it is adding, subtracting, contrast, spotting the ball, and you have a chance. But it's funny because in today's game, I look back, I don't even know if I would have had a chance to be drafted because I didn't throw hard
Sure.
enough. You know, so it's tough because you see all these kids who know how to pitch and they're not getting a chance, and that's a shame.
Yeah, I know Maddox is one that famously will credit, some of the investment he made in the mental side of the game as well, in terms of who he saw and how hard he worked on that. And I know Justin Verlander was a guy who kind of said the same thing. He didn't develop his velocity till, later, and he had a
Right.
chance to fill out and work up into that. He had to learn to pitch before he had
Sure.
that big dominating fastball, and that's probably the reason why he had the career he did.
Yeah, and he went to Old Dominion University. I mean, think about that. Everybody goes to these big schools or get drafted millions of dollars. He went to Old Dominion. There's one other guy I want to put in that mix that's more modern that the guys listening to the show will understand. Um, I watched him in high school. He threw 98 to 99, and he crafted himself and became a complete pitcher, and that's Zach Greinke. Greinke became a pitcher very similar to Maddox. He had that 95, 96 in his back pocket, but he never used it because he never had to because he was so crafty with his other pitches. I mean, that's what I do. You know, I'm a pitcher. I love the art of pitching, and I love watching those type of guys.
You mentioned how important culture is on a team, and you mentioned how close knit that '87 group was. How do you foster that as a coach? How do you grow that? You know how important it is, but how do you make it go?
It comes from the top. This guy start with the manager. This guy start with the manager, the coaching staff, and then just the players believing in that. You know, Tom Kelly was a nobody player. He had a very quick cup of coffee in the big leagues. But what we loved about Tom Kelly was he knew who Tom Kelly was, and he knew that we knew as players that if he got on us, there was a reason why he got on us, and we became better for that. And then when he treated the best player the same as he treated the worst player, we realized, you know what? There's nobody more special than another guy. There were leaders, the Pucketts and the Herbecks were the leaders of the team, but they respected each other, and it all started from the top. So you got to give a lot of credit to the manager and the coaching staff for making that culture the way it was, and for the front office getting the key players. I mean, in '87, what put us over the top? It was basically the same nucleus that with the previous few years. But what we did was we added Dan Gladden. We needed a leadoff hitter. We got a left fielder and a leadoff hitter. We needed a utility player that could play second, short, and third. Al Newman came in the equation. We needed a relief pitcher bad. We needed a closer because Ron Davis wasn't doing the job. So we picked up the Terminator, and he did pretty damn well. And then we picked up a couple of guys in the middle that got us too weird, and that's Berenguer and Keith Atherton. And that made the difference. But the rest of the guys, the Brunanskis, the Gaettis, the Herbecks, the Pucketts, the Bushes, myself, Timmy Laud, we were all there throughout, but we needed those other pieces to help us get to the top.
You have a chance on an annual basis to reunite with a lot of those names that you just listed off, and I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how we knew each other a little bit, and that's the Twins fantasy camp. We have a lot of guys that play in the Federal League that have been down to camp, and a lot of the names you might recognize. But for those who haven't been, maybe describe the vibe and what they're missing.
I came down to do a signing session 14 years ago, and I went out after the signing session to watch one of these fantasy games, and I hung out with Tim Laudner, and on that team were two sets of brothers, the Camps and the Great Checks, and I just sat there and I saw how much fun they were having with each other, how much fun. Timmy Laudner making fun of how everybody stinks in baseball and all this, but the guys were having an absolute blast. And I looked at Timmy afterwards. Timmy was one of my closest friends with the Twins my whole career. And I said, "Is it this much fun all the time?" He says, "It's more." And 14 years later, I've gone every year. I've coached. I've started doing the same thing. You've been on my team twice. We won a championship, and this year we lost the championship. But it's not about the winning and losing. That helps. Trust me, that's a lot of fun. But it's the friendships you make. We're no longer player celebrity. We're now friend. And that's the kind of stuff that's really cool. And you know that. The guys that I think this past year was your second year?
Second year, yep.
Yeah. Look at all the friends you've made already because of that. I mean, the best part about the fantasy camp is A, you want to walk out here at the end of the week healthy, which a lot of guys don't do. But B, you want to have a time of your life. And hopefully we as ex-players help that. And then having the teammates and the other fantasy campers you get to know, have a couple of beers with, so on and so forth. You get to know those guys, and that's the friendships that form. And that's why I love it so much. And as you know, I love telling stories. So these guys love it when I have a couple of beers with me. I never shut the hell up.
One thing I've noticed all of you former pros have in common is your ability to think on your feet with a comeback or trash talk. Is there some kind of class that they give you once you hit the majors that you learn how to do this, or?
Yeah, it's called being embarrassed too often. You better shoot. You better be able to get your act together, or else you're really going to be done the rest of your career. I'm telling you. You talk about if they know if they have you, it's going to be endless. That's why you got to learn to learn to be tough. Otherwise, they'll just abuse the hell out of you.
If you got some time, I'd love to transition to family a little bit. I know family is very important for you. Your wife Kathy is an owner trainer of a horse farm, aptly named Sweet Music Farms. Was on the website today. I saw the our team section. Clicked on that. Saw Kathy's bio, her background in horses, and but I didn't see you listed there. What's your role on the farm?
I do all the muck work. I do all that tough stuff. Like today we were supposed to talk an hour earlier, but I'm in a U-Haul outside of outside of a horse store getting 54 bales of hay for her. So I'm the runner. I do all the dirty work. I'm the one that's going to be picking up the crap that the horses lay all over the property. I do all that kind of stuff while she has all the fun with the horses and the other animals.
Love it. How did you guys meet?
42 years ago, I was playing for the Minnesota Twins, and it was the opening year of the Metrodome. And as you know, back then we were losing 100 games pretty consistently. And after the first inning, maybe 5,000 people would show up, and then the gates would close. Well, one of Kathy's three jobs while she was going to university, she was an undergrad at Hamlin University. She was going to grad school at the University of Minnesota. One of her three jobs was she helped out in the ticket office, the Metrodome. And back then I had really good eyes, and she was doing her homework in the stands like third or fourth inning, and thought she was a really pretty girl. And 42 years later, we're still together. So I got very, very lucky. And I'm getting rained on right now, so I'm going to walk to the truck.
All right. Um, you've got three kids together. Many people know, many people may not, but your boy Frankie had pursued a major league career for a while. In 2004, he was drafted by the White Sox. He actually played some ball in the independent league as well up here in St. Paul.
We played for the Saints for a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, we've got a lot of fathers that are growing up with their sons in this game. What advice can you give them about how you help develop and encourage Frankie, both his development and his love for the game?
It's not easy. It's not easy, especially being Frank Viola and him being my son. It was very difficult for him, and I didn't do it on purpose. It's just a name recognition. I didn't push him. The big thing is you just want your kids, not only son, but anybody. You want them to make choices of their own and be happy with those choices. And Frankie had an opportunity, as you mentioned, two different times as a regular pitcher. He pitched in the White Sox organization for 4 years. Then he came back as a knuckleball pitcher for a couple of years. Then he had a transition to figure out what he wanted. And for the last 8 years, he's been a fishing captain, absolutely loving life. He's out in the water every day. He's a topping captain, and if anybody's ever fished with him, he's the best. And he's a great, great kid on top of it, which I'm most proud of. So it's not easy. But I guess the one advice I would say is just don't push the kids. Let them do it with themselves and always be there and supportive of them.
Love that. Your other children are athletes in their own right as well. You've got an Olympic diver, and you've got a volleyball player. I know Kaylee is an assistant coach currently at Davidson. Maybe speak a little bit about them and some of what you're most proud of there.
I guess what I'm most proud of is their Right now, they're both happily married with 3 kids. So I got 6 wonderful grandkids. So from that standpoint, there's nothing better than that. Uh, Brittany. I think what I'm most proud of is that she didn't play team sports. She was always an individual part. She started in gymnastics, and then she got burnt out. The coach mentally abused her a little bit, and she just got turned off from the sport. And she went right from gymnastics to diving, which, if you think about it, it's the same thing in a lot of moves, but instead of landing on your feet on the dive board, you're landing on your head. So she transitioned in and out. Was a great athlete in both those sports, and she just ended up always had a dream of playing, being in the Olympics, and she got that opportunity. And in 2012, she made it in London, which we are so proud of because the one thing I wanted to achieve, never really had. I would love to have worn the red, white, and blue one time and say I represent my country. So that's pretty special. Kaylee was she's always been my little girl, but she's not little. She's 6 foot. She started out as a softball player and did that girly stuff, cheerleading, dancing, all that stuff. But she loved action, and she fell in love with volleyball, and she ended up having a pretty good career in volleyball. She went to Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina. It was a 4-year starter there, two-time All League. Uh, she had a great career. She stayed, got her master's. As you mentioned, she coached for a few years. And now she's happily married to a baseball player at Winthrop University, and they got
Oh, there you
three
go.
kids. And he's an orthopedist himself, so they're doing well and they're having fun. So I got
Fantastic.
very lucky. 3 wonderful kids, and they were all doing well. Thanks, Josh.
I opened up a platform for some of the players in our league to ask some questions of you. If you don't mind, I'd love to run a few of those by you now.
Go for it.
Adam West asks, what is the biggest problem in today's game in regards to pitching at both the collegiate and the professional levels? Why don't guys make it?
Well, because they're chasing, most of it's because they're chasing speed and they're not being taught right. Their deliveries, mechanics are real god awful, and you get injured, and the next thing you know, there's just nothing there. The other part about the high school college game that really drives me nuts, though, is that they don't have confidence in the catcher to call a game. The coaching staff is calling games for them. Now, how does a coach in the third base dugout know what I feel comfortable throwing at a certain point? How does he know my curveball feels good tonight? Why are you even calling the curveball if you don't know if my curveball, that kind of stuff. I think what they need to do is the catcher is the one guy in the field that sees everything. He's the leader on the field. You got to give him enough confidence. If he's going to be a leader on the field, you got to show him enough confidence to be able to call a damn game. So from that standpoint, that's frustrating. From professional level, it's just too much analytics. We were taught in the game that when you put the ball in play, good things can happen. They're being taught in the game that it's okay to strike out. We're going to go hit a home run and strike out. I mean, it's just ass backwards everything. I watched the game the other day, or not the other day, years ago. Guy was pitching, ended up in 18 minutes. In 18 minutes, he walked 3 guys, struck out 3 guys, and not one ball was put in play. So 18 minutes, all I did was watch a guy throw balls and strikes. I mean,
It's rough.
yeah, I just don't want to watch it anymore. So I like what I'm doing now, as I said, because I'm involved, I'm working, and I can teach my stuff.
Kind of answers one of Cliff Christopherson's questions. He asked who should be in charge of calling the game. Should it be the coach, the pitcher, the catcher? It sounds like you're very adamant it should be the catcher.
My best games, I never had to think. My catcher called the game for me. I had the ball in my hand, so ultimately, bottom line, I'm still going to make the final call. But I always felt most comfortable with my catcher knowing who I was, what was working, and him calling the game. But you can't blame him either. If you give up a home run, you
Right.
can't say it's your fault because I'm still the one who had the ball and threw it.
Sure. You mentioned your friendship with Timmy Laudner. Was he your favorite catcher to throw with, or was there another that you really gelled well with?
He was the longest tenured one I worked with, and yes, I loved working with Timmy. But there was a 10-game period with the New York Mets that Barry Lyons caught for me, and I think in the 10 games I was 9-0 with him.
Boy,
Then he got released. Then he got released, but I think I never lost a game with him. I just gelled for whatever reason. We were always on the same page. So I'd say Timmy and Barry, and then the third one that I absolutely loved throwing to was Tony Pena when I was with the Red Sox and he was my catcher.
one comes from one of the more prominent pitchers in our league. I'm not going to give you his name yet. He's a left-hander, and his question is, who is your favorite left-handed pitcher to work with when you were with Cleveland Indians, and why is it this person? To give you more context, he also played with your son at St. Paul. You know who it is by chance?
Oh God, Myers.
Yes.
Oh, tell him I said hi. You talk about a great kid right there. Yeah, he. You talk about somebody who should have been in the big leagues and didn't get an opportunity to be in the big leagues. As a young man, it got kind of gypped there. I loved watching him pitch for St. Paul. Yeah, he's in your league, huh?
Yeah, yep. He's obviously a force. He's been having some arm issues the last couple of years, but when he's healthy, he is very, very hard to hit.
Yeah, I saw that with St. Paul, and he had an opportunity. He got back out of St. Paul back to affiliated ball. That's pretty cool. Tell him I said hi, please.
Yeah, will do for sure. This one comes from, he's a communications director of our league. He's a big baseball card fan. He said you were a part of the Score 1991 Dream Team series, which is the first of its kind to use a professional fashion photographer for baseball cards. Your famous card has you holding an apple with the
Oh,
circle
the Big
change
Apple.
grip. Yeah.
Wow. Was that
Did
really the
you
first
recall that?
time?
Yeah, that was the first time they used fashion photographers to do baseball cards.
I did not know that. I remember the whole scenario, and I thought it was goofy as hell. But then I thought about it. I was like, Big Apple. I have the big. It was that one. That one was very cool, very special. And the other one was Nike came up with that sweet music where I was the maestro on the mound. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
Well,
those are the two coolest moments for outside of baseball where I was recognized for being a nickname and or special for a short period of time. That was pretty cool.
Lars also asked who your top fantasy camp players are over the years, but we all know that you'll say me, right?
I have no choice, do I?
No, no,
If
you
you weren't,
don't. So
whoever's talking to me would have been, but just I'm stuck talking to you now, so it's got to be you, so.
that's as big of a Frank Viola answer as I've ever heard one. I love it.
I bet you
But
the guys. Go ahead.
go ahead.
Are the guys in the league listening to this? They will all hear this.
They will hear this. We go ahead. Do you have a message for him?
So they no. They all know that the Josh Stoll is the friendly, nice type of guy. Is a really red ass on the baseball field. They all know that.
Yeah, I think most of them are aware of kind of the different personalities. Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I think you're another guy who has a little bit different temperament on and off the mound too. So maybe
Oh
I'm in
yeah,
good
yeah,
company in
yeah,
that regard.
yeah. You have to. You know that. You have to. If you're a competitor, you have to have fire. If you don't have the fire, there's not even any sense being there. I'm just joking, but the big thing is, and one thing I told you early today in the interview is, you have to curtail your fire sometimes. And for me, it took me a long. My first couple years in the big leagues, I was 11-25 with a 5+ ERA. Had no business being in the big leagues, but somebody believed in me, and the only person that didn't believe in me was me. I was blaming everybody. I was blaming the umpire. I was blaming my defense, as I told you with that one story. But it was never me, and it was never my fault because I threw a lousy pitch. I blamed everybody else. So once I realized that, you know what, I have to be responsible for number one before I could blame anybody else, that's when I became the pitcher I became, and it changed my whole career around. And the guys actually liked playing for me for the first time. And that makes a big difference when you know you have your teammates, the teammates, they have your back.
There's another left-handed pitcher in the Twins organization who won a Cy Young, who is well known for his changeup as well. Did you ever have a chance to? Yeah, did you ever have a chance to kind of compare notes with him? Talk a little bit about your careers.
Not a lot. But I will tell you this: I had a great changeup in my time. His was better, and the reason why I say that was because if I made a mistake with my changeup up in the zone, I did not throw hard enough to get away with it, and got hit. In his prime, that son of a gun could have thrown the lousiest changeup at the belt or above the belt, but because his fastball was so respected, people swung right through the changeup.
Hmm.
And I think that is the coolest thing in the world when you know you just made the worst pitch in the world and they still couldn't hit it. I never got to that point. Well, I never felt like I got to that point in my career. It would have been, it's got to be the coolest feeling knowing, oh my God, I can't throw a worse pitch and the guy still didn't touch it. That's how Santana was. He was, I mean, that's a Rule 5 guy. Somebody didn't believe in him. Can you believe that? The only thing that slowed his career down was his shoulder. People don't come back from shoulder injuries anymore for whatever reason. Hard.
Question courtesy of Casey Johnson. He also asked, we talked about that trade to the Mets a little bit and how it kind of played out for the Twins. Obviously, they went on to win in 91, but you were a 20-game winner for the next in 1990. Who do you think won that deal if you're wearing your GM hat?
Oh, no question, the Twins won it. They got another ring. I mean, I got 20 wins, but that's an individual accomplishment. It's not a team accomplishment. And the 90 Mets, if you look at the 90 Mets roster, we should have ran circles around baseball. Remember I told you earlier about getting along as a team on and off the field? Mets had we were so broken off the field, and it showed on the field, and we just couldn't compete against. That's when Jim Leland had Bobby Bonilla and Doug Drabeck and young Barry Bonds and Andy Van Slyke. Those guys believed themselves, similar to the '87 Twins, and they came together as a team, and they showed the Mets, you know what, a team is going to beat individuals every time, and that's what happened. That's probably the one team that I guess if I have to look back, that's the one team, the 90 Mets. I said, you know what? If we could have figured it out just a little bit, we should have won. I should have won another world championship. That team had everything it needed to win it, except for the friendship that you need to have off the field.
Just a couple more here, if you don't mind, Frank. What was your favorite pitch sequence, and what can you teach our guys in the Fed briefly about how to set up hitters?
Strike one. Doesn't matter where you play, little league, major league, senior league, fantasy league. Strike one. If you get a hit strike one, you could do whatever you want. You're in charge. You fall behind ball one, all of a sudden everybody and their mother, for the most part, is looking for a fastball. You got to come in with a pitch, and that's when you're going to get hurt. So strike one in any level of baseball is the most important. The other thing is you got to have a secondary pitch when you are behind the count that you're not afraid to be able to throw for a strike at any time. Because if you become a one-pitch pitcher, it doesn't matter how hard you throw the ball, it's going to get hit. So strike one sets up everything, and then just having enough confidence in that secondary pitch where from time to time you show up behind the count just to get the guys' heads off the fastball. That would be the two biggest tools. And work quick. The slower you work, the more it looks like you're afraid to throw the ball.
Sure.
Those would be my three biggest tips.
Love it. You've been just so incredibly generous with your time and your stories and your love of the game. I just really want to take a second to thank you, and it's an absolute honor to have this opportunity to ask you a few questions. And from hoisting a World Series trophy and with the Twins and shaping the next generations of pitchers in both the pro ball and upcoming levels, your impact on the game is absolutely undeniable. But what stands out to me is how you continue to lead with humility and wisdom and just a genuine love of the game. So just thank you so much, Frank, for coming on and for doing this. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime, Josh. Great talking to you.
Well, as you can tell, Frank is an absolutely riveting storyteller. I could have easily kept him on for hours. He has done so many great things at the highest level of this game, stuff that each of us have only dreamed about doing hundreds of times in the backyard when we were kids growing up. I am full of gratitude that Frank took the time to do this for the guys in our league. And I hope you appreciate, too, just how small the baseball community is, that even a guy like Frank Viola has memories and stories about players in our league. Before I let you go, I've got some housekeeping and some announcements for you. Opening day is just a week away for the Federal League, and to celebrate, we'll be doing our preview episode for you next Wednesday. I will predict win-loss records for all 34 teams in the league and take my best guess at who will win the AAA, AA, Single A, and B divisions in the 2025 season. For those of you who remember the results from last year's episode, you know that Nostradamus is not somebody to be trifled with. We were fairly accurate with our predictions last year, so you will not want to miss that. Bit of a heavier note for you, Ryan Marshall's wife, Jennifer. Some of you may remember her from our Real Housewives of the Federal League episode last season. Was recently diagnosed with breast cancer. There will be a benefit for her on May 1st at Willie McCoy's in Champlin from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. There will be a raffle and a silent auction. Glenn Everhart will be supplying some of the music, and it looks like just an absolutely incredible time. If you are able to get out there and support that cause, I'm sure the Marshall family would be very appreciative. If you can't make it, but you want to show some of your support, we'll tweet out a QR code that will allow you to donate. It will also be willing to accept some donations for the silent auction as well. So let's get out and support one of our own in their time of need. I want to put another event on your calendars. The Rosemount Pipers are doing a golf tournament and fundraiser May 19th at Gopher Hills. More details will be available soon on that, but reach out to Ken Fry or Cliff Christopherson if you're interested in playing in that. Finally, the Apple Valley A's are doing a cash raffle, and we'll post more details on X on this as well. Tickets are $100 a piece, but only 300 will be sold. The top prize is $5,000. In total, $20,000 will be given away in cash prizes. Included in that will be a $1,000 donation to the Federal League, and we're putting a fun twist on this. Everybody who buys a ticket will be given a vote on how to spend that $1,000. If you want it to go towards a second umpire in the postseason, or offset league dues, or maybe form a relationship to live stream our playoffs, we'll give you a voice on how that money is spent. For now, follow the link on FedUp Twitter page to purchase those and your chance to win. Well, that is all the time we have on this edition of Fed Up. We'll see you next week.